Otherwise, the rest of us, we're going to continue in our James series. And we've been in this series this is week 6, and we're probably going to be in it for quite a while, okay? Just going to be honest with you. This is going to be a long one, like Ephesians was. And you'll see the subtitle there says, A Blueprint for Faith in Action. And that's really what we're talking about. James has written a letter to Jewish believers. Remember, I'm not going to review all this, but he's written a letter to Jewish believers who had been dispersed by the people in Jerusalem they were coming after them. Okay, Stephen was stoned, and there's all this persecution, and so they take off and they start these little churches all over the place. And there's not a lot of direction. There's not a lot of instruction yet. And so James draws up a blueprint, and he says, here's how you ought to build your faith. And the reason we use a blueprint is because blueprints are very practical. And James is a very, very practical letter. And so we're going to actually get into some of those practicalities today. And you'll see there's a little handout in your bulletin if you want to grab it. If you're a fill-in-the-blank kind of person. I just got 3 points today. And those points are on that handout. But we're going to continue. Remember, James has spent a lot of time so far talking about trials in our life. And then last week we talked about temptations, right? And the difference in those things. And that God brings, what does God bring? Remember, God brings the what? The trial, but Satan brings the what? Temptation, right? And there's some differences in those things, and how we respond to those things are very important. And last week we talked about temptation. We ought to run from temptation, right? Rely on the Holy Spirit, understand the consequences, and negotiate, neutralize the sin, right? Chris came up with that word, neutralize the sin. We need to run from temptation. Well, today, James is going to do what he does a few times in the letter, and he kind of does these little offshoots, and he talks about just kind of a random thing, and then he comes back to it, and then he talks about it again, he comes back to it, just like me. I like to chase rabbits, I'm kind of ADD that way or whatever, and so he's like me. And so we're gonna kind of turn a corner today, and we're going to pick up right where we left off last week. We ended last week with verse 18. We're going to pick up in verse 19 of James chapter 1. This is week 6. And if you want to catch up, like if you're somebody like, oh man, I don't even know what he's talking about, you can always catch up on our website at EkklesiaYuma.com, and we've got the videos and the downloads, and you can do all those things you want to do there and catch up if you'd like to. Let's look at James. I'm going to be reading out of the New American Standard this morning. I'll actually show you a few other versions of this text because it tells us, it gives us maybe even a more clearer picture here in a second. James chapter 1, verse 19. Let me get it up on the screen, sorry. You should have a Bible around you somewhere too. Says this you know, this you know, my beloved brethren, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. Now, I want to look at this exact same verse in the Message. In the Message, it says this same verse, and the reason, this is what I do a lot of times. When I'm studying a text, I will look at it from several different translations, several different things, because I don't know if you're like me, like a lot of times someone will be teaching me something, and they're trying to tell me how to do it, and like I don't get it. But then a person, like let's say Brittany's trying to teach me how to, what do you do? What's something you do? Swim. She's trying to teach me how to swim, right? And this is good because you taught swimming and you taught swimming. So she's trying to teach me how to swim, and she's telling me like, okay, you move your arms and you kick your feet and you do all that, right? And I'm not getting it, right? And we all have those situations where someone's trying to teach us something and we don't get it. But then along comes someone else basically saying the exact same thing, just with some different words, and you're like, well, yeah, I get that. Right? And that's kind of like what these Bible translations are. It's just a different point of view, saying the same thing, maybe using a few different words, but coming to the same point. Let's look at what the Message says, same text. It says this, post this at all the intersections, dear friends. Lead with your ears, follow up with your tongue, and let anger straggle along in the rear. I love that, right? Lead with your, what? Ears, right? Then let your tongue come on next, and then let anger way back there. God's righteousness doesn't grow from human anger. I love that. Let's look at the New Living. The New Living, same verse, just a little bit different language. It's kind of closer to New American Standard. It says, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. You must all be, what? Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Now, some of you, I love doing this. I'll look at the same verse in a bunch of different translations, paraphrases, and things like that, just to kind of get a general idea, like maybe a different person telling me the same thing, a different person telling me the same thing. I like to do that when I study. Now, I know some of you, Christmas is coming up, right? And some of you are probably going to ask for a Bible for Christmas. Before you ask for a Bible, let me tell you this, because I know some of you, you're new to church and you don't have a Bible, and you're asking for one this year. Let me encourage you to go to a website. You can go to a bunch of different ones, but go to BibleGateway.com. That's the one I use, and read some verses where what you can do is you can look at the New Living, and you can look at the NIV, and you can look at the NASB and the ESV and the King James. You can look at all of them exactly at the same time and see the differences. And find one that speaks to you, because just like in this scenario, there might be a teacher that can, man, they get you, and you get it, and you're clicking, and then the other teacher is telling you the exact same thing, and it doesn't really click as much. Find a version of the Bible that really speaks to you, that you can hear, that you can listen, you can understand, and get that one. Just don't let someone just get you a random Bible, okay? And you can do that and ask for a specific version this Christmas if you're asking for a Bible. But anyway, that's just kind of a side note. But anyway, let's jump back to James chapter 1 out of the New American Standard, which is what we normally study. It says, "This you know, my beloved brethren, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God." Now we have one of those transitional statements there in the very beginning. This you know. Remember, this is like one of those therefores or because or however. We always say, whenever we see one of those things, we need to go back and say, what is he talking about? What is it that he's mentioning? What do we know? We know what he's already talked about a lot. He's talked about trials and now temptation last week. So think about this. In the midst of trials and temptation, we're probably going to deal with some frustration, maybe some anger, right? I mean, it makes sense that James would jump to anger after talking a lot about trials and temptations, because it's something we don't like to deal with, okay? Something that could make us angry. A lot of us, whenever you're in a trial or a temptation, there's some anger, like, why do I have to deal with this? You don't like it. And so it makes sense that he would say that. So he's kicking back to those things. Now, let's see. What are the three things, as you see up on the screen, okay? What are the three main things, and I just want you to shout it out, that James is telling us to do? There's some things that he's telling us to do or not do. And there's three of them. What are those three things? Huh? Okay, here he's telling us to hear or listen, right? What else is he telling us to do? Huh? Think before you speak. So he's telling us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, right? And then what else? I can't, man, you guys are all, someone tell me. Anger. Deal with the anger. So obviously I have this traffic light up here. For those of you that are guests, we don't normally have a traffic light, right? And so this is, for me, is just a visual representation, because I'm a visual learner. And if you hang out here, you'll know I'm doing all kinds of things, and I like these visual things. If we were to put, so the main words that I kind of came up with, or I didn't, I just read them there, is we're dealing with listening, we're dealing with speaking, and we're dealing with anger. Now, if I were to ask you on the traffic light, okay, those of you that have your driver's license, hopefully you know what the lights mean, right? Where would you have me put these words on the traffic light where they make the most sense? Like, let's talk about speak. Let's start with listen. Listen's the first one, right? Where would you put listen? On what light? What color? Green. Most people say green, okay? I agree. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, you did good. Okay, we need to be quick to listen, right? That's go. Be quick. That one's easy. Now, James says two things. He says slow to speak, slow to speak and slow to get angry. But then as you look at verse 20, what does he say about anger? He says that it's not going to help you at all. So if I were to ask you, where are we going to put speak, where would you put speak versus anger? Yellow. Now, we had a confrontation this morning already between Chris and I. Okay? This is not a yellow light, right? This is a what light? What color light would you call that? It's orange, right? It's like, what? Okay, raise your hand if you think this light is orange. Raise your hand. How many of you think it's yellow? A few of you, okay? A few of you are wrong. But okay, anyway. And so that leaves last. Just messing with you, Chris. Well, I'm really not. It's orange. But anyway, and so where would we put anger? Red, right? Stop the anger. We need to stop being angry. We need to do what we can to kill that sucker. So this really helped me this week when I'm driving around town because honestly, I get angry in the car, okay? And it's my place where I lose my Christianity, and I know you can't do that, but that's like I should probably peel the Ekklesia stickers off my car, is just what I'm saying. And for some reason, the car is it for me, okay? And we'll talk about that later, but I want for us, you see up on the screen, that we're going to talk about these three lights, okay? And yes, we need to stop the anger, that we need to be cautious when we speak, and we need to be all about listening and be quick to those things. And so we're going to look at those three things this morning, starting with the bottom. I always want to start on a positive note, okay? And we're going to talk about what the green light. Green light means what? What does it mean? Green means go. And so we're going to start with go. Look at verse 19 there. It says, "This you know, my beloved brethren, but everyone must be quick to hear." So if you are making notes, if you're writing those things in there, here's what I put for this. Go ahead and listen, okay? Go ahead and listen. Let's see, I know some of you are like freaks and you want to get that fill in the blank now. That's your fill in the blank. Go ahead and listen. Be quick to listen. Be a good listener. Now in premarriage counseling, I talk about this all the time. We need to be an active listener, okay? Have you heard of active listening? Anyone? Raise your hand if you've heard of active listening. Some of you need to hear about it, okay? You need to maybe get in some counseling. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, active listening is all about, there's some things, active listening takes on the idea that listening is more than just sitting there, right? That you have participation in truly hearing and giving feedback and response and clarification to the person that's talking with you, okay? And so there's a few things that I want for us to talk about. We need to provide feedback. When we're actively listening, we need to provide feedback, both verbal, by saying, yeah, man, I agree. Come on, amen, right? Or whatever. And nonverbal, which is what? Like shaking your head, saying, yeah, I agree. Or, no, you are wrong, right? Or whatever, like some nonverbal stuff. If I'm listening to you and I'm like this the whole time, what is that telling you? Right? It tells you I don't want to listen to you. I'm mad, I'm upset, I'm whatever. So even our body language and the things that we do will help us listen better. Now, there's a few things that I want for us to watch out for. The first thing that I want you to watch out for, when you're truly listening, and this happens to me all the time, I catch myself doing this all the time. Someone will say something, and I will begin thinking about what I want to say in response to that. Right? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like maybe you're in an argument or you're confrontation. Let's say someone says something and you don't agree with it. And so instead of really listening, you're formulating in your head what you're going to say, right? You're like, oh, I got this sucker, right? And you're like, see, you're figuring it all out and you're just waiting for them to stop. You're waiting for them to stop saying it and you're not listening. You're just waiting for them to stop. You're like, oh yeah, but this, right? And you just jump on them. You haven't even heard, after they said that thing you don't agree with, you really haven't heard anything else they said, but you've been formulating this thing. Or maybe it's something good, right? Maybe someone said, oh man, I got this great story. It's so funny. This dude fell off the bus, right, and ran him over, and it was awesome. You're like, oh, dude, in your brain, as soon as you hear that, you're like, oh, I got a better story, right? I got a better one. Man, I fell off the bus one time, got ran over by both wheels, right, and you're trying to updo them. You're not listening anymore because you're just trying to formulate what you're going to say next. We need to be really careful about not listening to the person and spending that whole time formulating a response, okay? Now, I know it's hard because with some people, you got to get in, you only get one chance to say something, right? And you know those people that won't shut up, right? You only get that one chance, and so you got to get in there really quick. But we got to be careful about thinking about what we're going to say instead of actually listening to them, because it's not really listening. Now, part of active listening is feedback and clarification, and this is I'm just going to say this, absolutely important in a marriage, okay? Clarification-wise. Lori was up here. She's out of here, so I can tell you a few stories about this, right? So clarification is absolutely important. What I'll say, because we don't speak the same language a lot of times. Lori and I don't. I mean, I don't know about you other couples, but it's just hard, okay? I speak a language, and we both speak English, but we're not on the same frequency. Do you know what I mean? She'll say something, and whatever she says, like, I don't know what she'll say, but I'll say, so what I hear you saying is, whatever, I'll make something up. So what I hear you saying is, you want me to help around the house more. Okay, I've heard that. Okay, that's the real life one, okay? I'll say, so what I hear you saying is you want me to help around the house more. And she's like, well, yeah, I do want you to help around the house more, but that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is I want you home more, right? Now, those are two different things, because what she's getting at is she wants me around to be with the kids because I need to be a husband and I need to be there for her, maybe date night, stuff like that. What she's saying really is, and that is that she thinks I'm a little bit too busy at work or with my friends or dirt biking or whatever it is, and she just wants my presence more. But what I heard was, you want me to work around the house more, right? That's what I heard. And so here's why that's absolutely important, because let's just take this out a little ways. Let's say that I hear she wants me to help around the house more, which could easily be construed from that statement. So then I work late on Wednesday, right? And I work late on Friday in order to work late Wednesday, Thursday in order to take off, half day on Friday. And I'm going to surprise her, right? And I clean up the whole house. I get off early Friday. I clean up the whole house, and I'm just waiting for her to come home because I'm waiting for the reciprocation. Yeah. And then hopefully I get paid a little bit, if you know what I mean. And then it's like all good, and I'm like excited for her to come home, and it's like all gravy, and I'm just waiting. And she walks in, and she's like, "Oh, that's cool. Thank you for cleaning the house." And I'm not getting the response, right, that I'm thinking, and I'm like surprised, or I'm like, what's going on? She's not, she's excited or whatever, and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, well, you haven't been around for 2 days. I said, well, I thought you wanted me to, help out more. And she's like, that's not what I said, right? She said, I wanted you around more. I wanted you to take off Monday, not so we could clean the house, so that way we could spend time together. Now I'm thinking, man, I just clean up the house for no reason, right? That's what I'm thinking. But I could have easily saved all that had I clarified with her, right? Clarification in a relationship, in any kind of communication, is absolutely important. Because a lot of times we're not on the same wavelength, okay? And part of active listening is clarifying. Here's what I heard you say, okay? And then if they say something different than what you said, and that may have been what I said, but that's not what I meant. Let me clarify back what I mean, okay? It's absolutely important. Another thing I want to talk about, just really quick, is these suckers right here, okay? Yeah, that right there. That's what I took. These suckers do not help you listen, right? Now, when you're listening to someone, like face to face, like say Doug and I are talking, and I'm here like, checking my sports scores or whatever. I'm just going to be honest with you. A lot of you ladies, I know you can multitask like that. Like you can check your phone and listen at the same time. And in fact, it's kind of a trip. I'm looking at Beth. I know that Lori, because Lori's a hairdresser, Lori can cut the person's hair, listen to that person talk, but also listen to Beth's client at the same time, and listen to this one, and know that she's got a cell phone and text, and do all these things at the same time. Women have a pretty, and I know I'm being very stereotypical here, but most women have a very good sense about multitasking. I don't. And most of the guys I know don't either, okay? So when you're listening to someone, okay, put down the phone. Pay attention to them. Look in their eyes. And if you're trying to talk to me and I'm looking at my phone, okay, I'm not listening to you. And say, Augie, put down your phone, right? I need you to hear me. I need you to listen to what I'm saying. Those phones, they're awesome. Great phone. I love my iPhone. But it's a listener killer, right? You can't do two things at once. So stick those stuff Stick those things in your pocket. Let's move on. We're never going to get done. The yellow light was caution. We need to have caution when we're speaking, okay? Caution when speaking. That's your fill-in number 2 there. The text says, but everyone must be quick to hear and slow to speak. Now, this is only a preview, and we're only going to talk about this for just a second, because in James chapter 3, James goes extensively on speaking, okay? Turn to James chapter 3, probably a page right or so, depending on your Bible. James chapter 3, verse 1 through 12. Does anyone have like a title on the top of chapter 3? What does it say, like at the top of that? Controlling the tongue. The tongue is a fire. James spends chapter 3, 1 through 12, talking about our tongues. We have incredible power when we speak, okay? Power to build and power to destroy. And so we're going to talk about this extensively in a few weeks. So I'm only going to kind of preview this. But I want to kind of share the main verse, the main thing that sticks out there in chapter 3, which is verse 8 and 9, okay? But no one can tame the tongue. This is kind of a overarching, the principle he's talking about here. But no one can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil and full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the likeness of God. We need to be careful what we say, okay? We need to be careful what we speak, because we have the ability to build up. We have the ability to destroy. Whoever told us years ago, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I mean, I understand that, okay? I get it. But it's a lie. The reality, and I know why we say it, because I've told my kids that, on the playground. You got other kids that are making fun or whatever. Yeah, let those sayings just bounce off you. Don't worry about them. Just let them slide off. They shouldn't hurt you. But what happens when someone you love says something bad, says something hurtful? Many of you here right now are still carrying, right? Carrying things from the past. Carrying hurtful things were said to you or about you by someone that you love. Man, incredible power. Some of the wounds, some of the anger that you possess today is backtracked back to when someone that you loved said something bad about you or to you, and you're still dealing with it today. We need to be very careful with what we say. We need to have caution whenever we speak. I'm not going to get into all that, because we're going to go through that in a few weeks, okay? But we have an orange light there, or yellow light, so we got to talk about it. The red light. The red light says what? What does red light mean? Stop, okay? We need to stop the anger that you feel in there. We need to stop the anger. Now, I know you say, oh, yeah, easy, stop the anger. How am I supposed to do that? Well, let's look at what James says, okay? I know that James says slow to anger, okay? And that makes sense, because most of us are not the Hulk, okay? Most of us don't go from normal to, you know what I mean, and your shirt's popping off. I mean, I do, because I'm so buff, But anyway, I'm kidding. But Marcy and I are working out, so anyway, I'm really, really sore right now. Man, right back here, what do you call this? Your triceps, killing me right now. I can't even pick up a pizza. What, you seen that commercial, that dude can't pick up the pizza? Yeah, pretty cool. Anyway, so here's the deal. Verse 20, although James says slow to anger, verse 20 qualifies that I think we can easily say we need to stop the anger, okay? Look at it there. Verse 20 says this. I'm going to read the whole thing. This you know, my beloved brethren, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Then here's the qualifier. For the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. So if our anger doesn't do anything for our relationship, doesn't do anything for our spirituality, then I can pretty confidently say that we need to stop it. We need to curb it. In fact, Paul says you need to put it away. You need to get rid of it, run from it, do whatever you can do to short circuit that stuff. Now, anger usually builds. I mean, a lot of you, unless you're a hothead, don't just all of a sudden, you know what I mean? It builds and it builds and it builds, and one thing builds on another, which builds on another, which builds on another, which I understand why he would say slow, because it is a process for most of us. However, anger doesn't work, right? Anger's never going to get you closer to your wife. Anger's never going to get you closer to your kid. In fact, it's just going to put you further away from the people that you love. Anger's going to get you further from your coworkers. Anger is going to get you further from God. Anger is going to get you further from all the relationships that are in your life. Anger never fixes anything. Now I know some of you are like, well, what about holy, righteous anger? There are some cases where God will give you some holy, righteous anger, but I bet you can count on one finger how many times that's happened, okay? What James is talking about, the anger, the selfish anger, right? The anger that we just want to blow, we're not getting our way. And friends, that's really what the root of anger is. We don't get our way. We don't get what we want. We feel indebted, like someone owes us something. The root of our anger is that we don't get what we want, okay? And that's just reality. I mean, that's reality. And there are some of you, any of you know a hothead? Raise your hand if you know a hothead. Like, okay. Don't raise your hand if you live with a hothead, okay? Some of you live with a hothead. Some of you are a hothead, okay? And if that's you, okay, Jessica's back there raising her hands. Some of you are raising your hands. Like, but I'm just going to be honest, and you may not like this. Nobody likes a hothead, right? Nobody likes a hothead. When you're around a hothead, you've got to walk on what? Eggshells, right? You got to do whatever you can to not make them blow their top. A hothead never truly knows the people around them, because the people around them are always putting on this fake facade just to make sure that the hothead doesn't blow up. The hothead, you never really know the people around you if you're someone that just blows up all the time, right? And this is reality, and it's not fun, maybe, but it is reality for us. And the person that gets angry really easy is normally the person that it's not just that they all of a sudden get angry over getting their name spelled wrong on their Starbucks cup. Do you know what I mean? Like something little like that can sometimes, you've seen on the internet, right? The people on the internet going crazy at the McDonald's because they didn't get a burger or whatever, they're just going, ah! Those people are angry about something else, right? It's just coming out at McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever. And a lot of times for an angry person who just keeps blowing their top over the littlest of things, there's really something deeper, right? There's something deeper that they haven't dealt with. They feel like maybe way in their past, they still feel like they were wronged, that they're owed something, that they didn't get what they want. And I want to say that anger, really, the root of all anger is not getting what we want. Think about this for a second. I'm going to pick on a lady right now. Let's say your spouse, if those of you that are married, your spouse, your wife goes out and buys $200 worth of shoes, right? And you get angry, right? Why are you angry? You're angry because you told her that you got to save money. You know what I mean? And so ultimately, you're not getting what you want, right? You wanted her to save money, and she didn't. What's another example of getting angry? You're not getting what you want. Let's say like you work at a company for years, right? And the promotion, you're like seniority and you work hard, and it looks like everyone thinks you ought to get the promotion, right? And you're like next in line. And then the owner's nephew gets what? Gets the promotion. And you're what? You're angry, right? Because you didn't get what you want. You didn't get what you thought you deserved. Anger is really about us not getting what we want. And in a bunch of different situations. And sometimes those things begin to fester and grow and grow and grow. Maybe that person took something from you. Maybe they took your innocence from you by verbally, physically, emotionally abusing you. That person took your childhood from you because your parents made you raise your brothers and sisters because they were out of the home or drinking or whatever they were doing. Maybe that person owes you your purity. Maybe that person owes you, that company owes you a promotion. Maybe that organization owes you that scholarship. Like, you should have been the one that got that scholarship. Like, there's so many things that it could be in your life that you feel like you were owed, right? That you feel like there was a debt that was not paid to you. Maybe that person took your kids away. Like, they took them and she left you and took the kids, and you haven't heard from them since. You have a feeling of being in debt. Like, they did something to you that was bad. And there's this anger because of it. Most of our anger is rooted in feeling like we are owed something. Okay? The problem is, the problem with this is when we walk around life feeling like we're owed something, 99% of the time, you're never going to be repaid. Okay, that's just reality. Okay? Uncle Rico. You guys know who Uncle Rico is? Raise your hand if you know Uncle Rico. From Napoleon Dynamite. You ever heard that movie? Heard of that movie? Uncle Rico was angry. Okay? Uncle Rico was angry because he felt like Coach should have put him in the championship game, right? And he's just walking around angry. If I had been put in, I would have scored the touchdown. I would have done this. And Uncle Rico's like 40 years old, still angry about Coach, right, not putting him in. Is there any way that anger is going to go away? There's no way to pay that debt, right? There's no way. Rarely is anyone going to come up to you. Now, I would say 99% of the time in your life, 99% of the time, you feel like you're owed something, it's rarely ever going to be paid back to you. Someone's not going to come to you 20 years later and say, I'm so sorry for what I did to you 20 years ago. Someone's not, that person has totally moved on past that. They're totally over that. Their life has moved on, and you're still angry because of it, okay? Maybe it was 2 years ago. That person that stole your scholarship, okay, they don't care about you. They're not going to apologize. The scholarship committee is not going to write you a letter saying, we chose the wrong person. We wish we could do something different. It's not going to happen. So what do we do, right? What do we do with all of that pent-up frustration, that anger, those feelings of being owed something? What do we do with those things? I want for us to turn to Ephesians chapter 4. Turn there with me. Ephesians chapter 4. We keep going back to Ephesians because we've done our series, right? We did that series last year in Ephesians, and I'm praying that you're familiar with this text. What Paul says about our anger touches on this subject. Ephesians 4:31 says this, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you. Put it away. Put it away. Stop it. Red light it. Get it out of your life, okay? Now, bitterness, wrath, clamor, slander, malice, those are all attitudes and actions that are very similar to anger, okay? They're all related, okay? He says to put it away. Well, we know we're supposed to put it away. How do we put it away, right? You don't just flip a switch one day, okay, my anger's gone. Okay, Augie told me to stop the anger, told me to red light the anger, so I'm just going to red light it. How do we do that? Paul tells us how. Let's see what he says. Let's continue. Let's see the solution. Verse 32. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted. Here's the big, ugly, stinky word that nobody likes. Okay? What is it? Forgiving. Forgiving each other, just as God in Christ has also forgiven you. You see that ugly word? Forgiving. How do we get rid of anger? If the root of our anger is being owed something, okay, then we have to forgive, because 99% of the time we're not going to be paid back, okay? You're never going to get your innocence back. You're never going to get your purity back. Those things are not going to happen. And until you forgive the person, okay, or the organization, the scholarship committee, the coach, whoever it was, until you forgive them, your anger is going to continue to build and build and build. And you may think that it's no big deal, it's 20 years ago. It's down there. We need to learn to forgive. And I know a lot of you are like, yeah, but they owe me, right? They owe me. Yeah, they do. They absolutely owe you. You're not getting it back, okay? It's not happening. That dude that cut you off in traffic doesn't care about you, okay? He's not going to pull over his car and say, I'm so sorry, right? It's not going to happen. You're owed an apology for being flipped off? Sure. Are you going to get one? No. So what do you have to do? It says here, you have to forgive, okay? God says that forgiving someone is, it's honestly just the first step in you learning to get rid of the anger. To put it away is what Paul says. Now, I know some of you are like, yeah, but they don't deserve it. Like, you don't know what they did to me. They do not deserve my forgiveness. And you can absolutely be right. Probably absolutely correct that they do not deserve that forgiveness. But neither did you. Look at what he continues to say. Verse 32. Just as God in Christ also has forgiven you. They may not deserve to be forgiven. Okay? But neither did you. Neither did you. What I'm talking about is your salvation experience. Okay? We talked about this a couple months ago. Remember the parable that Jesus shares about the servant who owed his master $1 million, right? And the master says, I forgive the debt. And then that same servant went and found another servant that owed him $100, right? And he says, give me my 100. Like, how dare him, right? He's just been offered forgiveness of $1 million debt. And then 5 minutes later, he goes over and tries to collect $100 from the other servant. How dare us, right? How dare us not forgive those who have hurt us? We have been forgiven much, and so we should forgive much. It is the first step in getting rid of anger. I know a lot of you are like, man, you've never thought about it this way, but our unforgiveness truly is, in most cases, that feeling of being owed something. It truly is the root of our anger. And we need to deal with those things on a very real and personal basis if we're ever going to kick the habit of anger, okay? If we're ever going to do it, we have to get our minds around this. Now, this is something I want to do. Martine, can you grab one of those books that's on the back, that book back there? I want to tell you about a book, and I want to offer you, I bought 3 of these books. This book is called Enemies of the Heart. And I've never done this before. I don't think I ever have. Been preaching for, 12 years. I've never really promoted a book. I know this is an issue that a lot of us deal with, okay? And this is a great book to read. I read this a few years ago, and as I was studying this past week, I went back through the anger section. The subtitle is Breaking Free from the 4 Emotions That Control You. And those 4 emotions are guilt, anger, greed, and jealousy. Okay? This book, I cannot recommend it enough for those of you that are like, I'm speaking your language right now, like there's something going on in your heart, you know that you need to deal with some issues. This book by Andy Stanley is a great resource for you. And I'm willing to read it again. I want to read it again and read it with a bunch of you, and we can do a study on it or whatever. You need to get help with this, okay? You need to get help forgiving those that are in your life and getting past this anger issue, because if you don't, you're never going to truly do what God's calling you to do. Remember, that's what James is saying. Man's anger isn't going to get you where God wants you to go. It's not successful. It's not going to help you. And until you get past that stuff, you're going to be stuck in a rut, stuck in a routine, and say, how come I can't get out of here? because you're not truly dealing with this issue. So I've got 3 copies on the back. They're $13.50. They cost me $13.51. So you're getting a great deal, right? You're getting a penny off, right? So it's, that's such a sale. Some of you ladies are like, it was on sale. You can say it was on sale. You've got 3 copies. You can order your own, whatever. But I would love to read this book with some of you and truly get your heart around some of this issue of anger and unforgiveness. Let's kind of close by wrapping this up. And guys, you can come forward. Worship team, you guys can come forward. I want this image, and the reason I used a traffic light is because for some of you, you're very visual like me. I want this image to stick in your brain. And the reason I use a traffic light is because, I'm sick, okay? When I get in the car, I go full light red, anger, and I don't know what it is. And I began thinking about this. I'm not getting what I want when I get in the car, because what I want is for all of you to get out of my way. Ultimately, I know that's sick, but that's true, right? Like, I feel like I'm better than you, that my schedule is more important, that my life's more important, and I don't want you in my way. I was thinking about some of this stuff this week, and deep down, and I know I am like twisted, like that's how I feel, like you're just in my way. My life's more important, my work's more important, so get out of my way. I'm not getting what I want, right? I'm not getting what I want, which is you to I literally want you to treat me like an ambulance. Do you know what I mean? Like, just move over to the side. I was like, why do I get so mad? Because I'm selfish, right? And I don't want you in my way. I don't want to have to deal with you. I don't want your stupid blinker going right when you're going left and turning in front of me. I got things to do. I'm more important, right? And I'm sick, okay? And so for me, the traffic light is absolutely an important thing, because I was driving around this week trying to, okay, I'm not angry. I'm dealing with it, right? I forgive you, you snowbird that cut me off 4 lanes. I forgive you. You know what I mean? Forgiving you in the name of the Father and the Toyota or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I was trying to do whatever I could to stay cool when I was driving, because it's something that I deal with. But we need to do this. We need to go ahead and listen, okay? Listen actively, okay? Listen with your ears and your eyes, and put down the cell phone, okay? We need to be cautious when we speak. We need to be careful about what we say, because we have words that can build up and can tear down. And we need to stop the anger. We need to put it away and forgive those that are in our life that feel like they owe us something. So let's become more like Jesus by being quick to hear and slow to speak and slow to anger. Guys, if you'll come forward for the offering, I'm going to pray as we close. Father, I thank you for today. I thank you for...